How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Tuesday, Yom Shlishi. Let's light up the darkness. I'm having quite a day. Steven in New Hampshire, Melissa in Great Neck, Lucy in Minnesota, Bella in Florida, Bill in Atlanta, Joe in the Inland Empire, Guy in Ohio, Belle in Texas, Shandor in the Bronx, Sharon in New Jersey, Renee in Indiana, Ella in Southern California, Chaim in Florida, Marjorie in Georgia, Aoife in Florida, Nancy, North Carolina. Welcome, everybody. Things are heating up around the movie as we're working toward our release. It's in April, but right now everything is just absolutely nuts. So many responsibilities for me as the director and one of the producers of the movie. And a lot of media interviews are starting to happen, lots of publicity. That's, it gets done now so it can be released later. And in the midst of all of that, just having a truly nonstop day today, it just, of course, it's a kiss from God. That in the midst of that incredible busyness, this is probably my favorite story in our whole 7.5-year journey through the Talmud. From the first time I encountered it, this story about God creating the humans and consulting with the angels that we'll get to a little bit later today. I don't know. It just touches something in me. I'm utterly fascinated by this story. That's why today is a key DAF. And there's lots more. Lots of stuff in today's DAF. So let's just get right into it. Controversy, bizarre, extreme, questionable, kitchen sink. Today's a kitchen sink daf. Everything is in it. Let's get into it. Our daf is page 38, although we are starting on page 37b, about halfway down. 37b, yeah, more or less. We're continuing our discussion of Mishna number 3 here in chapter 4 of Tractate Sanhedrin, the 24th volume of the Talmud. Generally, we're talking about how judges in a capital case, intimidate the witnesses. And they use the word intimidate, meaning you need to know that it could be based on your testimony that a defendant is sentenced to death. And if you lie, even if you're not intentionally fabricating your whole testimony, but you get parts of your testimony wrong because you're guessing or you heard about it, it was hearsay, you heard it from somebody that you think would always tell the truth, but you didn't see it yourself. These are things that you're not allowed to offer as witness testimony that you saw. Only you can testify about what you saw, right? Not what you think happened, what might have happened, what you heard happen. And if you kind of get it wrong and your memory is a little bit mushy and you end up saying something happened that you didn't really see happen, and then this defendant gets executed because of it, his blood will be on your hands, on your soul, not just in this lifetime, but forever. Right? Because that person, maybe he gets executed and then he doesn't end up having children. And children that he might have had he been acquitted in this trial, will never be born. And that blood will also be on your hands. That's what we've been talking about. Okay. Halfway down 37b. The Mishna taught that in cases of capital law, the court warns the witnesses not to testify based on conjecture. So the Gemara comments, one can infer that it is only in cases of capital law that we do not rule based on conjecture. But in cases of monetary law, we do rule based on conjecture. Yesterday we said, what is conjecture? If you see one man chasing another and the pursuer has a sword in his hand and he chases the other one into a ruin where there's no other people, and then you enter the ruin and you see the pursuer holding a sword with blood dripping from it, and the one who was pursued lying on the ground, convulsing from stab wounds, you might think to say, the pursuer stabbed, and the one is dying, and he dies, so the pursuer killed the pursued. But you didn't see that. You saw him run in carrying a sword, and when you walked in, you saw him holding a bloody sword over the other one, but you didn't see him kill the pursued. So if you say, I saw him kill the other guy, that's conjecture. Truthful testimony would be, I saw him run in after the other one, and when I walked in, he was holding a bloody sword and the other one was convulsing. That's testifying to the facts. Sounds like, in a capital case, you can only talk about what you saw and not your conjecture. But perhaps in a case of monetary law, you can offer conjecture as a witness? Let's see. In accordance with whose opinion is this Mishnah taught? Well, it is taught in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Acha, as it is taught in a Baraisa in Tractate Bava Kama, that Rabbi Acha says, if there was a rutting male camel, right, in heat, a male camel looking for female camels, and when they are rutting, they become very aggressive and difficult to control. So if there was a rutting male camel that was rampaging among other camels, and then a camel was found killed at its side. So from this, it is evident that this rampaging camel killed it, and the owner must pay for the damage that his rutting camel caused. So the Baraisa indicates that Rabbi Acha rules that cases of monetary law are decided based on conjecture. Interesting, we're talking about offering testimony. Here it sounds like the judges can decide based on conjecture. The witnesses can only report what they saw. But okay, so maybe that's the difference between monetary law and capital law. If no one saw the actual murder, then the defendant will be acquitted, even though those other facts were like that, because there was no witness to say he saw the murder. But it sounds like the judges can decide a case of monetary law based on conjecture. So the Gemara asks, but according to your reasoning, with regard to that which the Mishnah teaches, that the court warns the witnesses not to provide testimony based on hearsay, should one infer that it is in cases of capital law that we do not say that testimony based on hearsay is allowed, but in cases of monetary law, we do say that testimony based on hearsay is allowed? Okay, my light just went off. Let me quickly see if I can just switch it back on or not. Kind of odd. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Huh. I don't know what's up with that. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why my light went off. Okay, it's cozier, more intimate here. Where was I? Okay, so the concept being that it says in cases of capital law, we don't allow conjecture or hearsay. And now you just said, well, apparently you do allow conjecture in monetary law cases, since we only said it's in capital law cases that we don't allow it. Well, if that's true, since we also said that in capital law cases we don't allow hearsay, does that imply that in monetary law cases we do allow hearsay? Now there's going to be an objection. But didn't we learn in a Mishnah of this tractate on page 29a that if the witness said that the defendant said to me, it is true that I owe money to the plaintiff, or if he says, so-and-so said to me that the defendant owes the plaintiff. Well, in these cases, the witness has said nothing, i.e. his testimony is disregarded because it's hearsay. Now, these two statements by witnesses are examples of testimony based on hearsay, and yet they are not valid in cases of monetary law, just like they wouldn't be valid in a case of capital law. A witness's testimony is not valid testimony unless he says, for example, the defendant admitted in our presence to the plaintiff that he owes him 200 dinars, as by admitting the debt in the presence of witnesses, he rendered himself liable to pay the amount that he mentioned, right? So it's not that you heard someone owes or you even heard the lender say, I am owed. It's only when the borrower says in the presence of the witnesses and, by the way, the lender, that he owes the money, that the witnesses can say, we witnessed the loan. Evidently, although testimony based on hearsay is not valid in cases of monetary law, we tell the witnesses to be aware of this only in capital law. Well, here too, with regard to testimony based on conjecture, one can say that although testimony based on conjecture is invalid in cases of monetary law, we only tell the witness to be aware of this in cases of capital law. So do we allow conjecture in monetary cases or not? We're not going to answer that right now. We're going to move on. A Mishna teaches that the court would say, you should know that cases of capital law are not like cases of monetary law, and would reference the murder of Abel by Cain. So Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, says, by employing the plural term for blood, hold on one second. In business. The Mishnah teaches that the court would say, you should know that cases of capital law are not like cases of monetary law, and would reference the murder of Abel by Cain. So Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, says, by employing the plural term for blood, as we mentioned yesterday, in the phrase, in the verse, Genesis 4:10, that the voice of your brother's blood, and it's really blood, deme, cries out to me from the ground. The verse teaches that Cain, yesterday we said it teaches that Cain and that Abel and his descendants were killed by Cain, right? That he killed both Abel and all the children that Abel would have had. Now we're learning an alternative interpretation of this. Rabbi Chia says, or Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, says, that when it uses the term deme, your brother's bloods cry out to me from the ground, the verse teaches that Cain caused multiple wounds and multiple injuries to his brother Abel. Why did he do that? Why did he keep stabbing Abel? Because Cain did not know from where the soul departs. No one had ever committed murder before. No one had ever killed a person before in any way. So Cain didn't know how to kill. He just kept stabbing until the soul departed. So he struck multiple times. And this continued until he came to the neck of Abel and struck him there, and then Abel died. And Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, says, from the day the earth opened its mouth and received the blood of Abel, its mouth has not opened again. As it is stated, and I'm going to go into a verse from Isaiah, but just to review why they're talking about the earth opening its mouth. So what it says is, Cain spoke with his brother Abel, and it happened that when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. And God said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And then God said, just as then he said, but meaning God, what have you done? The voice of your brother's bloods, cries out to me from the ground. Therefore, you are cursed more than the ground, which opened wide its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. And when you work the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall become a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth. So it's interesting. God is saying that obviously Cain is guilty, but also the ground was some kind of accomplice in the murder, possibly to cover up the murder. Like the ground was active. The ground opened its mouth to receive the blood, either to provide burial for Abel or to help Cain cover up the murder. From the day the earth opened its mouth and received the blood of Abel, its mouth has not opened again. As it is stated, quote, from the corner of the earth have we heard songs, glory to the righteous, Isaiah 24:16. And from this verse, one can infer that the songs are heard from the corner of the earth, but not from the mouth of the earth, as the earth never again opened its mouth. Chizkiah, Rav Yehuda's brother, raised an objection to Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chiya. The verse states concerning Korach and his assembly, who rebelled against Moses in the wilderness. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their households, and all the men that appertained unto Korach, and all their goods. Numbers 16:32. So Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chiya, said to him, it opened again for a deleterious purpose. It did not open again for a constructive purpose. For a constructive purpose in the case of receiving Abel's blood, so presumably not to act as an accomplice to cover up the deed, but rather to actively and sympathetically receive Abel and to bury him. And Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chiya, says, exile atones for half of sin. As initially it is written in the verse concerning Cain, that he said, and I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer. Fugitive na and a wanderer vanad. In the earth, here I did in this translation, right? It was a vagrant and a wanderer. A fugitive and a wanderer. And ultimately it is written, and Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod in Genesis 4:16. So Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chiya, equates Nod with Nod and understands that Cain was given only the punishment of being a wanderer. Exile atoned for half of his sin, thereby negating the punishment of being a fugitive. Rav Yehuda says exile atones for three matters, i.e. three types of death. As it is stated, quote, so says the Lord, behold, I set before you the way of life and the way of death. This is from Jeremiah 21, verses 8 and 9. I set before you the way of life and the way of death. He that abides in this city shall die by the sword, and by the famine, and by the pestilence. But he that goes out and falls away to the Chaldeans that besiege you, he shall survive, and his life shall be for him for a prey, P-R-E-Y, indicating that exile from Jerusalem will save one from those three deaths. Right? Very interesting. Now, that's the end of the first temple period, when the spiritual level of the nation had fallen so low that the temple could no longer stand, and it was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in that siege of Jerusalem, where many, many people died, but the Jewish people did not die because they had the option to leave the city and go into the Babylonian exile that began there. Rabbi Yochanan says, exile atones for all transgressions and renders a sinner like a new person, as it is stated concerning King Jechaniah, a descendant of King David. Quote, so says the Lord, write you this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days. For no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David and ruling any more in Judah. That's Jeremiah 22:30. And after Jechaniah was exiled, it is written, and the sons of Jechaniah, the same is Asir Shealtiel, his son. That's from 1 Chronicles 3:17. So the verse employs the plural sons, although he had only one son, Shealtiel. So Asir, literally prisoner, teaches that his mother conceived him in prison. Shealtiel, literally planted by God, teaches that God planted him in a way atypical of most plants, i.e. people. What is he saying? He's saying that it is learned as a tradition that a woman does not conceive when she is standing during sexual intercourse. That's according to this view. I would not rely on that for birth control. Now on page 38a. And the mother of Shealtiel conceived while standing. So alternatively, Shealtiel is interpreted as meaning that God, Kel, requested Nishal, dissolution of his oath, as it were, and allowed Jechaniah to father a child, even though earlier he had been cursed not to have children. So it must have been that he atoned. And how did he atone? Through exile. In the continuation of that passage in Chronicles, where the verse refers to the grandson of Jechaniah, Zerubbabel, the Gemara interprets that his name teaches that he was sown, Nizra, i.e. conceived, in Babel. And what was his true name? Nehemiah, the son of Hachaliah, was his true name. Now, having mentioned the sons of Rabbi Chiya, the Gemara relates, Yehuda and Chizkiah, the sons of Rabbi Chiya, were sitting at a meal before Rebbe, and they were not saying anything. So these are two great sages of the younger generation. So they're young, but they're becoming great sages. And Rebbe, who is the Nasi of that generation and the one responsible for redacting the Mishna into writing, sadly because the Romans were persecuting the Jews so harshly that there was fear that the oral tradition would be lost. The Mishnah never should have been written down, but we were forced to do that. Rebbe was forced to do that because of the dangerous conditions of that time. Okay, so before Rebbe, these sort of young, up-and-coming sages, Rabbis Yehuda and Chizkiah, the sons of Rabbi Chiya, were sitting at a meal, and he recognized their greatness, but they were not saying anything. So Rebbe said to his servants, add more wine for the young men, so that they will say something. Well, once they were inebriated, they loosened their tongues, and they said, the son of David. Now the son of David refers to Moshiach, the Messiah, the descendant of David, who will be the Messiah and come and redeem the Jews. Something we always think about in terrible times of persecution, like they were enduring. So the son of David, the Moshiach, will not come until two fathers' houses are destroyed from Israel, as those two families are preventing the redemption. And say, this is what Rabbis Yehuda and Chizkiah said, that these two families, that are headed by important fathers, are preventing Mashiach from coming. And which families are they? And they are the head of the exile, who is in Babel, i.e. the family of the exilarch, and the Nasi, who is in Eretz Yisrael, i.e. the family of Rebbe, as it is stated in reference to the Mashiach, the Messiah, quote, and he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel. So what are these houses of Israel? Must be the two houses charged with the leadership of Israel. So that would be the house of the Nasi in the land of Israel and the house of the exilarch in the exile, in Babel. How are they preventing Mashiach from coming? So Rebbe said to them, my children, do you throw thorns in my eyes? How can you say this in the presence of the Nasi himself? Rabbi Chiya, the father of these boys, sitting beside the leader of the whole Jewish world, the Nasi, Is he embarrassed? Is he frightened? The Nasi has a lot of power. What's going to happen? Rabbi Chia says to him, my teacher, do not view their behavior in a negative light. Wine, yayin, is given in letters of 70, right? The word for wine, yayin, has a gematria, numerical value, 70, right? Because that's yud, yud, nun. Nun is 50, yud is 10, and another yud is 10. So 50 plus 10 plus 10 is 70. The numerical value of yayin is 70. Wine is given in letters of 70. And sod is given in letters of 70. Right? The word for secret, sod. That's samech vav dalet. Vav is 6, dalet is 4. That adds up to 10. And samech is 60. So 60 and 4 and 6 is also 70. So there's some kind of a link through gematria between the word for wine, yayin, and the word for secret, sod. And that is why, and this is one of the great famous sayings in the Talmud, when wine enters, secrets emerge. And this can have multiple meanings. This could mean loose lips sink ships. Right? So when people are drinking, they say things that they shouldn't have said. Or when a righteous person consumes some amount of an intoxicant that kind of opens a door for him, and he sees things he wouldn't have otherwise seen. So then when wine enters, secrets emerge, mystical secrets emerge that might not have been revealed otherwise. That's what Rabbi Chia is saying to the Nasi. He's offering both meanings, right? Either, look, you got them drunk. Don't be mad at them that they're now saying things that they're bringing down. And possibly what they're bringing down could be true. Apropos the discussion of exile, Rav Chisda says that Mar Ukva says, and some say that Rav Chisda says that Mari Bar Mar says, or taught, that that Mari Bar Mar taught. What is the meaning of that which is written, quote, and so the Lord has hastened the evil and brought it upon us, for the Lord our God is righteous in all his works that he has done. That's from Daniel 9:14. Is it because the Lord our God is righteous that the Lord has hastened the evil and brought it upon us? Why is God punishing us so? And he explains, yes, because it was a righteous act that the Holy One, blessed be he, performed for the Jewish people by hastening the exile of Zedekiah, right? Of Tzedakah. No, I'm sorry. Well, yes, it was a righteous act that the Holy One, blessed be he, performed for the Jewish people by hastening the exile of Zedekiah, while the Jews who had been exiled in the exile of Yechaniah, which preceded it, were still alive, as the wise people among those exiled with Yechaniah were able to instruct those exiled with Zedekiah. What are they saying? They're saying, we deserve it, right? That we were exiled from the Holy Land. None of us wanted it. The righteous people didn't do anything to deserve it. But the nation as a whole, its level had fallen so much, and the righteous people were not able, to encourage and uplift and keep everyone else righteous. And so the first temple was destroyed and the exile began. And it was done in 2 stages, and that the second exile, the final exile from that period, was hastened, actually ended up being a benefit because there were learned people in that exile who were able to transmit important knowledge to that second group of exilees, as it were. And if you just think about it, how many times in life something looks terrible when it's happening, and then in retrospect, you're able to see that, well, God really did me a favor there. It was awful while it was happening, but if it hadn't happened, greater things could not have come to be later in that journey, later in that story. Now, this is as it is written concerning the exile of Yechaniah, and all the men of might, 7,000, and the craftsmen, Hecharash, And the smiths, vehamazger, 1,000. That's from 2 Kings 24:16. So the Gemara interprets the term charash, which can be read as cheresh, deaf mute, is referring to Torah scholars, as when they open their mouths to teach Torah, all the others become as though they were deaf mutes, as they would listen quietly to the one teaching Torah. That would be good. And the term masger, which is related to sagur, meaning closed, teaches that when they close, i.e., when the Torah scholars finish teaching the laws, then they do not reopen the discussion, as all has been clarified. And how many were these Torah scholars? 1,000. So Ula says the righteous act that the Lord performed, referred to in the verse in Daniel, was that he hastened the exile by 2 years of venoshantem. Moses taught in Deuteronomy 4, verses 25 and 26. When you shall have children and children's children, and you shall have remained long, venoshantem, in the land, and shall deal corruptly, and make a carved idol, the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord your God to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you shall soon utterly perish from off the land into which you go over the Jordan to possess it. You shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. Right? So before the children of Israel entered the promised land, when Moses was still with them, before he perished, and the leadership was handed over to Joshua, who then led the children of Israel into the promised land. Before he died, Moses said, I call heaven and earth to witness that if you follow God's laws, you will live long in the land. But when you abandon God's laws and take on idolatry like the surrounding nations, then you will be cursed and stricken and punished and ultimately exiled from the land. And he was the greatest prophet of all time, so God showed him it's going to happen. It's not just a warning. So at least if your warning is strong enough, they'll live in the land a long time. But eventually they're going to fall. And how long was a long time? Well, you had the 410 years of the first temple. And prior to that, you had another 400 and some odd years between when the children entered the land and when David eventually chose the site in Jerusalem and Solomon built the temple. So all told, it was about 850 years, more or less. Let's keep reading. The numerical value of the letters of the word venoshantem is 852, right? Remained long. You shall have remained long in the land. You'll be in the land a long time, and then you're going to be exiled. How long? Well, the word venoshantem, it has a gematria numerical value of 852. And the Jewish people were exiled in the 850th year after entering the land of Israel. Since they were exiled 2 years early, according to this calculation, not all of the curses enumerated in the verse would be fulfilled. Remember when Moses gives the curses, if you don't follow God's laws, you're going to be cursed like this and like that. The land won't give food. It'll be like copper, iron, sky, copper, iron, ground, etc. Many, many curses. You'll borrow from nations and you will not lend, and you will be pursued by a small number, and many, many curses. But because the exile came a little bit early, 850 years instead of 852, well, those last 2 years would have been really awful. Much better that we were exiled 2 years early than go through the kind of, genocide that the Babylonians were doing to the Jews in those attacks by Nebuchadnezzar. So Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says, learn from it, that for the master of the world, the term soon is referring to 852 years. As the verse states, you shall soon utterly perish. And the intended time until the exile was 852 years. Right? That's like the guy who gets, God actually speaks to him. I'm going to butcher that joke, and we have so much to cover. I'm going to do it. But the point is, when God says something's going to happen soon, according to this, that means 852 years. The Mishna teaches, therefore, Adam, the first man, was created alone. Now we're back to our Mishnah where the court, the judges, are warning the witnesses to tell the truth and how important that is. Okay, so in that discussion where we said that the bloods of your brother cry out to me, and that means that you'll be responsible for Abel and all the children he might have had. And then that warning continues. And therefore, Adam, the first man, was created alone. And the sages taught in a Baraisa, Adam was created alone. And for what reason? So that, and this was to tell you, and why? Because anybody who saves a soul in Israel, it's like he saved a whole world. And anyone who kills someone in Israel, it's like it destroyed a whole world. Why? Because a whole world of people came from Adam, right? And a whole world of people ended up coming from Cain and Seth, right, who replaced Abel. But a whole world of people didn't come from Abel because Cain killed him. Okay, so why? And then once we're in that discussion, we're talking about why did all the people come from Adam? Okay, one reason is to teach you that a whole world of people can come from one person. But there's a few more lessons that we can learn from it. Therefore, Adam, the first man, was created alone. And the sages taught in a Baraisa, Adam was created alone. And for what reason? So that the heretics will not say, there are many authorities in heaven, and each created a different person. Alternatively, Adam was created alone due to the righteous and due to the wicked. It was so that the righteous will not say, we are children of the righteous, and righteousness is natural for us. So there is no need for us to exert ourselves to be righteous. And so that the wicked will not say, we are the children of the wicked, and there's no hope for us to change our ways. No, both righteous and wicked people came from the same progenitor, Adam. Therefore, the righteous have to work hard at staying righteous, and the wicked always have hope that they can make an atonement and become righteous. Then the Baraisa continues, alternatively, Adam was created alone due to the families, so that the families will not quarrel with each other, each one boasting of the heritage of their progenitor. And if now that Adam was created alone, and even so families still quarrel, and each family claims superiority over the others, if there were two people created initially, all the more so would they do this. Alternatively, Adam was created alone due to the robbers, and due to those who take by force that which is not theirs, as the feeling of fraternity among all people, having descended from the same forefather, will limit crime. And if now in the world where Adam was created alone and nevertheless criminals still rob and take by force that which is not theirs, if there were two people created initially, all the more so would this be the case, right? If people can't realize that everyone is your brother, because we all are descended from Adam, and still people act horribly toward other people in the world, imagine if they could say, I'm a descendant of Adam, and this guy, he's a descendant of this, other guy, if there were two people initially, so all the more so, I don't know him anything, right? It'd be just one more reason people would give to pursue the lascivious, power-hungry, greedy, evil inclination actions that people do. So at least it's limited somewhat by the fact that we're all descended from the same progenitor. Now the Mishnah teaches, and this serves to tell of the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be He, is when a person stamps several coins with one seal, they are all similar to each other. But the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, stamped all people with the seal of Adam, the first man, as all humans are his offspring, and not one of them is similar to another. And the sages taught in a Baraisa, the fact that Adam, the first man, was created alone serves to declare the greatness of the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, as a person stamps several coins with one seal, and they are all similar to each other. But the Holy One, blessed be He, stamps all people with the seal of Adam, the first man, and not one of them is similar to another. As it is stated, it is changed like clay under the seal, and they stand as a garment. Job 38:14. And the verse describes people as being created under the seal, but their external appearance is different, just as garments can differ in appearance. The Baraisa asks, and for what reason are their faces not similar to one another? And the Baraisa answers, it is so that a man will not see a beautiful home or a beautiful woman and say, she is mine. If all people look the same, no one could contradict him. as it is stated in the following verse. And from the wicked their light is withheld, and the high arm shall be broken. Job 38:15, indicating that the reason people look different from one another is to prevent the wicked from succeeding in their plans. An important teaching here in a Mishna that's generally about eyewitness testimony in a capital case. If all people looked alike, how could we ever have witness testimony telling us who did what? Impossible. But thank God, we all look different, and witnesses can tell one person from another in a lineup. It is taught in a baraisa, Rabbi Meir would say, one person is different from another in 3 ways: in voice, in appearance, and in thought. So the differences in voice and appearance are due to a woman forbidden to him, so that people will not exchange spouses with one another. And the differences in thought are due to the robbers and those who take by force that which is not theirs. As if everyone thought in a similar way, criminals could take advantage of others because they would understand where they keep their valuables. The sages taught in a baraisa, Adam, the first man, was created on erev Shabbos, right? Friday afternoon, at the close of the 6 days of creation. The 6 days of creation, right, were Sunday to Friday. And what was the 7th day? Shabbos. That's why we have Shabbos, because God rested on the 7th day. And for what reason was this so? Right, so here we're learning. There was the 6 days of creation, right? On the first day, God said, let there be light, etc. And when was man created? Last. When was that? On the 6th day. How late in the 6th day? Pretty late. And for what reason was this so? So that the heretics will not be able to say that the Holy One, blessed be He, had a partner, i.e. Adam, in the acts of creation. Alternatively, he was created on erev Shabbos, so that if a person becomes haughty, God can say to him, the mosquito preceded you in the acts of creation, as you were created last. Alternatively, he was created on Shabbos Eve, on erev Shabbos, in order that he enter into the mitzvah of observing Shabbos immediately. The first thing he's going to do is keep Shabbos. Alternatively, he was created on erev Shabbos after all of the other creations in order that he enter into a feast immediately, as the whole world was prepared for man, for the human. The whole world was prepared for the human because there was no other sentient being that was going to enjoy the world like the human would. This is comparable to a king of flesh and blood who first built palaces and improved them and prepared a feast, and afterward he brought in his guests. As it is stated, quote, wisdom has built her house, and she has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has killed her beasts, she has mingled her wine, she has also furnished her table. She has sent forth her maidens, she calls upon the top of the highest places of the city. Proverbs 9:1-3. Basically saying that God constructed the entire creation with wisdom. Right? God set the table with unfathomable wisdom. We can't always understand that. We can never really understand God's ways at all. But we have complete faith that God used unfathomable wisdom in constructing the world. And the Baraisa explains, wisdom has built her house. This is referring to the attribute of the Holy One, blessed be He, who created the entire world with wisdom. That doesn't just mean that God, in God's wisdom, went about creating the world. It might actually mean that the building blocks of the world are God's wisdom. Quote, she has hewn out her 7 pillars. These pillars are referring to the 7 days of creation in which the world was established. Quote, she has killed her beasts, she has mingled her wine, she has also furnished her table. These are referring to the seas and the rivers and all the necessities of the world that were created. Quote, she has sent forth her maidens, she calls. This is referring to Adam and Eve, who were created at the end of creation. And the verse continues, upon the top of the highest places of the city. And Rabba Bar Chana raises a contradiction. It is written upon the top of the highest places. And it is written afterward, for she sits at the door of her house on a seat in the high places of the city. So is she at the top or on a seat? And he explains, initially Adam was alone upon the top of a high place. And ultimately Adam was on a seat that is set for a bridegroom when Eve was paired with him. And the verse states in that passage, whoever is thoughtless, let him turn in here. As for him that lacks understanding, she tells him. Proverbs 9:4. And the Gemara explains, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, who lured this man to sin? The woman told him to sin. An allusion to the interpretation that one who is lured to sin by a woman is called one that lacks understanding. And this is as it is written, he who commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. Right? One who comes to sin, whether committing adultery, fornication, or worse, idolatry, pursuing it out of his lust and seeking to satisfy his evil inclination, is somebody that no matter how intelligent he might be, has totally lost sight of his creator, of our commandments, of priorities, and in satisfying some, passing urge, is willing to give up everything of real importance. It is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Meir would say, the dust that served to form Adam, the first man, was gathered from the entire world. As it is stated, quote, when I was made in secret and wrought in the lowest places of the earth, your eyes did see my unshaped flesh. Psalm 139, verses 15 and 16. And it is written in 2 Chronicles 16:9, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, indicating that this figure was formed from the whole earth, the place within view of the Lord's eyes. Right? When God formed man out of the earth, he didn't just pick some spot and take the dirt from there. That's how he somehow summoned dirt from everywhere in the world. And Rav Oshaya says in the name of Rav, with regard to Adam, the first man, Adam Harishon, Adam, the first man, now in 38b. His torso was fashioned from dust taken from Bavel, from Babylonia, and his head was fashioned from dust taken from Eretz Yisrael, the most important land, and his limbs were fashioned from dust taken from the rest of the lands in the world. And with regard to his buttocks, Rav Acha says they were formed from dust taken from Akra de Agma, which is on the outskirts of Babel. Rabbi Yochanan Bar Chanina says daytime is 12 hours long, and the day Adam, the first man, was created was divided as follows. In the first hour of the day, his dust was gathered. In the second hour, an undefined figure was fashioned. In the third hour, his limbs were extended. In the fourth, a soul was cast into him. In the fifth hour, he stood on his legs. In the sixth, he called the creatures by the names he gave them. In the seventh, Eve was paired with him. In the eighth, they arose to the bed, 2, and descended, 4, i.e. Cain and Abel were immediately born. In the ninth hour, he was commanded not to eat of the tree of knowledge. In the 10th hour, he sinned. In the 11th hour, he was judged. In the 12th hour, he was expelled and left Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. As it is stated, quote, but man abides not in honor, he is like the beasts that perish. Psalm 49, verse 13. Adam did not abide, i.e., he did not sleep in a place of honor for even one night. As soon as he was formed, the sin came. Now, that primordial first day of the creation, did an hour have the same meaning that it has for us? How is time measured there? Who can say? But on the literal surface meaning, all of these events happened really fast. Rami Bar Chama says, in explanation of the end of that verse, a wild animal does not have power over a person unless that person seems to the wild animal like an animal. As it is stated, he is like the beasts that perish. Now, the Gemara presents a mnemonic for the statements that follow. At the time, to the end, Aramaic. Right? That would just help you if you were memorizing this. And now we come to my favorite story in the entire Talmud. Rav Yehuda says, that Rav says, at the time that the Holy One, blessed be He, sought to create man, or to create a person, to create the human, He created one group of ministering angels, and He said to them, if you agree, let us fashion a person in our image. What? God created the ministering angels, a myriad of them, myriad 10,000, like a whole host of angels. He created them. They have no power over God. As you shall see, God has unlimited power over them. Why would God say to the angels, if you agree, let us make man in our image? Our. What's our? It's only one God. So what is God saying? This is to teach you humility. That when you're doing something important, even though you got a clear vision exactly how to do it, consult with others who can give you a little extra perspective. If even God does that, how much more us? At the time, the Holy One, blessed be He, sought to create man. He created one group of ministering angels, and He said to them, if you agree, let us fashion a person in our image. And the angels said before Him, Master of the universe, what are the actions of this person you suggest to create? I've also seen it translated as, and what will be his deeds? What will be the deeds of the human? And God said to them, his actions are such and such, according to human nature. God even could, it's God, so God can sort of show a movie, right? Coming attractions. This is how the humans will behave. And what did God show the angels? Human history. From God's perspective, He could show it from the present, from the past, from the future. God showed the angels, He didn't tell, He showed the angels what the humans would be like, what we are like, how we treat each other, all the evil that men do, as well as the great things. But it included all the evil that humans do. And the angels said before Him, Master of the universe, what is man that you are mindful of him? That's printed in the Department of Philosophy at Harvard University. What is man that you are mindful of him? Psalm 8, verse 5. And the Son of Man that you think of him, i.e., a creature such as this is not worth creating. Why bring so much trouble into the world as humans who will be utterly wicked and abusive and do terrible things? What did God do? God outstretched His pinky, His small finger, among them and burned them with fire. Destroyed all the angels who questioned. God asked them for advice. They said, well, why would you create those people? They're so awful. And so God wiped out the angels. And the same occurred with a second group of angels. He created another group of angels, a myriad of them. Said, shall we make man in our image? They said, what will be the deeds of man? He showed them. They're like, why would you create such a creature? And God wiped them all out. The third group of angels that He asked said before Him, Master of the universe, the first two groups who spoke their mind before you, what did they accomplish? The entire world is yours. Whatever you wish to do in your world, do. God then created the first person. When history arrived at the time of the people of the generation of the flood and the people of the generation of the dispersion, i.e. the Tower of Babel, whose actions were ruinous, the angels said before God, Master of the universe, didn't the first set of angels speak correctly before you? That human beings are not worthy of having been created? And God said to them concerning humanity, This is a quote from Isaiah 46:4. Even to your old age, I am the same. And even to the hoary hairs, meaning my white hairs, will I suffer you. I have made and I will bear and I will carry and I will deliver you. Meaning, having created people, I will even suffer their flaws. God is saying, yeah, you're right. Probably would have been better not to create the humans because they do so much wicked and hateful and awful things. But what can I do? I love them. This story, let's remember, was told by Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Adam, the first man, spanned from one end of the world until the other. As it is stated, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and from the one end of heaven unto the other. Deuteronomy 4:32. Meaning that on the day Adam was created, he spanned from one end of the heavens until the other. Primordial man. Adam before he sinned, the way Adam was meant to be. This is why when we're talking about Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, there's a reason we can't find it on earth, because it's a mystical higher place in the upper realms. Man that occupied the Garden of Eden, this was like a creature the size of galaxies, right? Just completely different from us. Once Adam sinned, the Holy One, blessed be He, placed His hand on him and diminished him. As it is stated, behind and before you have created me and laid your hand upon me. Psalm 139, verse 5. That at first Adam spanned behind and before, meaning everywhere, and then God laid His hand on him and diminished him. Right? Not only did man become mortal, Adam wasn't going to die if he had not sinned from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He wasn't going to die. He was going to be permitted to live in that upper mystical realm. Once he was found not fit for that place, okay, now he's going to live out on earth. He's going to earn his bread by the sweat of his brow. And he's not going to be the size of galaxies. He's going to be like us. Rabbi Elazar says, the height of Adam, the first man, was from the ground until the firmament, the heavens. As it is stated, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and from the one end of heaven unto the other, so Adam stood upon the earth and rose to the end of the heavens. Once Adam sinned, the Holy One, blessed be He, placed His hand on him and diminished him, as it is stated, behind and before you have created me and laid your hand upon me. Gemara asks, the interpretation of the verses contradict each other. The first interpretation is that his size was from one end of the world to the other. The second interpretation is that it was from the earth until the heavens. So the Gemara answers this and that. From one end of the world to the other, and from the earth until the heavens are one measure, i.e. the same distance. And I would say that makes a lot of sense, because we don't understand the infinity, if it's infinite, of the physical universe, but we have some concept of what we can't conceive. Meaning that there are other dimensions, other worlds, the mystical realm. It's not a measurement in space or even in time. But when you talk about the upper spiritual realms, that's infinitely far away from our world. Just as if you could measure from one end of the universe to the other, which you can't. And for that reason, you can't measure the distance from the earth to the heavens, which is an infinity of infinities. It's just... it's not a physical difference. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. And Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Adam, the first man, spoke in the language of Aramaic. As it is stated in the chapter of Psalms, speaking in the voice of Adam, how weighty also are your thoughts to me, O God. Psalms 139, verse 17. And this, i.e. that the verse in Psalms is stated by Adam, is what Reish Lakish says. What is the meaning of that which is written, this is the book of the generations of Adam, Genesis 5:1. This verse teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, showed Adam every generation and its Torah interpreters, every generation and its wise ones. And when he arrived at his vision of the generation of Rabbi Akiva, Adam was gladdened by his Torah and saddened by the manner of his death. And he said, how weighty also are your thoughts to me, O God, i.e., how it weighs upon me that a man as great as Rabbi Akiva should suffer the terrible death that he suffered at the torture of the Romans. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says Adam, the first man, was a heretic. As it is stated, and the Lord called to the man and said to him, where are you? Right? When after they ate of that fruit and realized that of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then realized they were naked, and then they hid from God. So God says, where are you? Meaning, to where has your heart turned? Indicating that Adam turned away from the path of truth. Rabbi Yitzchak says he was one who drew his foreskin forward so as to remove any indication that he was circumcised. And it is written here, and they, like men, have transgressed the covenant. Men, Adam, have transgressed the covenant. When we talk about the covenant, we mean the bris. We mean the covenant of the flesh that is in all Jewish men. And it is written in a third verse, and then they shall answer, because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord their God and worshipped other gods and served them. Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah 22:9. That's what I've got for us today. We'll take a few questions on Sanhedrin 38. Lucy, what if a witness does not report something he saw because he does not want to cause the death of the accused? Is there a problem with that? Yes, right? That was in yesterday's warning that they said, because now that we've warned you that if you make false testimony, and someone dies, his blood's going to be on your hands. So you might say, I don't want to testify. I don't want to have that responsibility. But it is also written that somebody who knows something that can save someone's life or that can condemn him, but it is the truth that needs to come out in a court of law, that person is obligated to speak. So you shouldn't be afraid that you're going to have someone's blood on your hands as long as you speak truthfully, right? And if you're not sure about how an idea came into your head, you just say, well, this is what I saw, this is what I remember seeing. Here I'm not sure, and the judges will help you parse that out, because in a capital case, through inquiry and interrogation, they will drill right down to what you actually saw. So as long as you're telling the truth, you have nothing to be afraid of. As long as you're telling the truth, you have nothing to be afraid of. Sharon, I always thought it is not only because Adam was created alone, but also because he was created from dust, from all four corners of the earth. So, one nationality could not claim superiority. Lovely teaching. Yosef, what kind of heretics within Judaism would say God had a cohort in creation? I would say possibly Hellenistic Jews at the time, I suppose. Right. Jews who are turning their backs on Judaism and practicing idolatry. That's why they're heretics. That's why we'd call them heretics, because they're turning to idolatrous religions that suggest there's more than one creator in the world. Just so. And Yosef says, I'm originally from Cambridge, Somerville, Massachusetts, near Harvard. I often spent much time in their divinity school library and saw the spiritual history of the college before its secularization. Just so. A friend of mine actually is in the Harvard alumni community, and look at the seal of Harvard, which says Veritas. It's V-E-R-I and T-A-S. And those are printed on 3 different books, right? If you look at the Harvard seal, it's like there's 3 different books pictured there. And the word veritas, truth, is divided up over those 3 books. And my friend was telling me that those 3 books, I think they represent the Bible, the Talmud, and one other. I mentioned this the other day, I know. I got to get back to him and find out exactly what the 3 books were. I just want to add one more thing before we go. And that is because I heard a shocking and terrible story today that happened to a friend of mine. And without going into the details, the two cars hit each other. And thank God my friend and his family were safe. But a person in the other car died. And that person was in the back seat. It was a head-on collision. And the two people in the front seat and all four in the other car, they all had their seatbelts on and they all walked away from the collision. The person who was in the back seat of that other car was not wearing a seatbelt, and that person died in this accident. And I was telling this to a friend of mine, and she's like, "Oh my God, I don't know where I heard that people in back seat are safer if they don't wear a seatbelt." And I'm here to tell you that every person in a car needs to have a seatbelt on at all times, front seat or back seat, and that the paramedics at the scene told my friend, "Yeah, we never unbuckled a dead body," right? They never found, in their experience, not the whole world, but these paramedics who've been to so many accidents said that they had not, found a dead person wearing a seatbelt. And that person, that the person who died in this accident would not have died had that person been wearing the seatbelt. So please remember and share with others. It shouldn't be news to everybody, but front seat or back seat, just don't go anywhere without that seatbelt on. Please God. And you should never need it, but remember it. That's what I've got for us today. I'm so glad that we were able to share the story of the creation of man and the consultation with the angels on page 38 in Tractate Sanhedrin. Tomorrow, like we always do in DAF Yomi, we'll move on. All the best, my holy sisters and brothers.